So I wrote a story for a complete lark, and it was called Amma, There's a Bat in My Sambar. I just found that writing for children was just so much fun, so enjoyable, so rewarding. And the children will come up to me and tell me exactly what they liked, what they didn't like, why they didn't like it, why did you have this ending? This doesn't make any sense. What I love about the editors I've worked with is they're always suggestions. They're always like, you could try this. What do you think of this? Who hasn't grown up feeling insecure about how they look, their hair, their weight? We've all gone through that. You have 6-year-olds who now think they need a 7-step skincare routine, and you have brands marketing, children are, and all of us, we're just to be able to accept who you are. And it's a long, long journey and it's a long process. I think the nicest thing is that I've had so many mothers who have bought the book for their children come and tell me how, say that I wish I'd had this book when I was a child. Say that I'm not going to be doing everything every day perfectly, beautifully. And that's how I've kind of made my peace with it.
Hi, Menaka, and welcome to the About Her Show. This is a show where we get trailblazing women to share the story of their lives with us. To tell us about their successes, failures, challenges, ups and downs, all of it, so that not only do they get a platform to showcase themselves, but they also help us inspire other women. Women who are listening in, who have dreams, ambitions, but for some reason, have not been able to follow those dreams. So we want them to get out of whatever is holding them back and follow those dreams. And then, along with women, we also get men on the show because we believe that for a truly gender inclusive world, men and women need to be allies in this journey. Now, when I looked at your profile, it really fascinated me. And also, I resonated with it, to a very large extent because I saw that, from a corporate career, you switched to writing and then children's writing. So, it is like something very close to what I am also doing, though I haven't stopped doing what I started doing initially, but I am doing other things, which made me feel once again that, in today's times, we have the opportunity to start discovering, not only discovering our strengths, but being able to capitalize on those strengths, which maybe, back in the day, it was not possible. So I think we're very fortunate to be living in these times and in these days. So, of course, let me not go on and on and on, but once again, a very, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Sangeeta. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
So am I. So am I. So then let's get started. All
Sure.
right. So, starting with your journey, so as I understand, you started your career in advertising before becoming an author and storyteller. So, my question is, what sparked that shift and how did you rediscover your voice as a writer?
So I think my kind of story is dotted with many, many shifts like this. I actually studied computer science in college. And I think very, very soon into my first 10 days in college, I realized, oh, I don't have the kind of brain that can think so logically and sequentially, and, to be able to be a coder or a software programmer or anything like that. And so I somehow kind of muddled my way through 3 years of a graduate degree. And I'd always loved debate. Whose line is it anyway? Just a minute, in inter-college fests and things like that. I was on the college quizzing team, all of those things. And I remember after college, I was very confused as to what I should do. And I had a family friend tell me, you love writing, you're always kind of coming up with these wisecracks and jokes. You should maybe join advertising. And that's actually how I got into advertising, entirely on a lark and on a whim. And I was very, very fortunate that I was given an opportunity to become a copywriter. But after a few years of doing that, somewhere along the way, I got married. We started a family. And advertising is not the most conducive industry to be in if you have very young children and you want to be at home at a certain time and maybe read them a bedtime story, put them to bed, and spend some time with them. It can have very, very chaotic, unpredictable hours. So during that time, once we'd started a family, I thought, let me take a break from advertising. And I'd started writing columns in newspapers around the same time, mostly around my parenting journey.
Mm.
And I used to really, really enjoy that. I used to get great feedback from readers, and it was something I found very, very enjoyable. Um, and yes, all of a sudden, I found myself then in Bangalore, freelancing, doing some writing work. And I joined Pratham Books, actually, which is a nonprofit children's publishing house. And I joined them to do social media and communications for a platform that they have called Storyweaver. And one of the editors at Pratham Books had been reading my column for quite some time, my parenting column at the Indian Express. And she said, you have a really fresh and funny take on things. And, I love reading your column. Have you ever thought of writing for children?
Mm.
And I said, no, I haven't. It's never even crossed my mind that that could be something that I could do, I might consider doing. And she said, why don't you write a story? Why don't you write a manuscript for me? And if it's good, I'll think of publishing it. And, I really thought this is Bijal Vacharajani. She's an amazing commissioning editor at Pratham Books. She's an author herself.
Mhm.
And I thought Bijal was joking. So I wrote a story for a complete lark, and it was called Amma, There's a Bat in My Sambar, because I really thought she was kidding.
Uh-huh.
And I then went to work the next day after I'd finished it, and I read it out to her. And she said, oh, this is so funny. I love it. And I'm going to publish it. And even then, I thought she was joking
Mhm.
until, things actually started getting a little bit more serious. And they're like, oh, now here's how the book will be made. And this is the illustrator. And it was completely, it was such a surprise. But I had so much fun writing the book.
Mhm.
I really, really enjoyed it. And then I started writing, I wrote a few more picture books along the way. And I just absolutely loved it. I just found that writing for children was just so much fun, so enjoyable, so rewarding. And that's really how that shift happened. It was really a spark from an editor. It was not even something that I ever thought I'd do myself.
But I think then that's what it is, we need such people in our lives who can spot those sparks in us, spot the talent, and, encourage and motivate. Because even if we
100%.
somewhere know, sometimes you're just not confident enough, sometimes you're not sure enough that you will be able to do it. And plus, you're following a path. To
Mm.
break away from that is also not very easy. So I think kudos to her for discovering you. And of course, now we see what a fantastic job you're doing of this. All right. So as you said, you've written, columns and brand stories and now children's books. So tell me, how does your storytelling lens change when the audience moves from corporates to children?
Oh, yeah. I think, like you said, I've written for corporates, I've written, campaigns for tech companies, timeshare holidays, high-end kind of boutiques, newspapers, magazines, and I now write a lot for children. I think children are the hardest audience to write for. I think, and very often people are like, oh, they're kids. How hard can it be to write, for a 4-year-old or an 8-year-old or a 12-year-old? But I think children are one of the most brutally honest audiences that you can come across. Because if they don't like what you've written, halfway, they're very happy to toss a book aside halfway through. If it's a very young child and a parent is reading to them and they're not engaged by the story, they'll ask for something else to be read out to them. And so they're really, really, really hard to please. I think much harder than any corporate I've ever written a film or, an advertising campaign for in my life. And they'll come and tell you. I've done a lot of sessions in schools, at lit fests, in community libraries, and the children will come up to me and tell me exactly what they liked, what they didn't like, why they didn't like it. Why did you have this ending? This doesn't make any sense. And they're so honest with you. And they have this amazing inbuilt kind of radar for any kind of, I don't know if I can say the word, but BS. So you can't try and hoodwink them. You can't try and fool them. You can't package some moral story in some kind of a, fluffy, frothy story and try and teach them. They will pick up on everything. And I think they are an audience that I have the utmost respect for. And I think that they are much harder to please than any head of marketing anywhere.
Well, you're right, because they will not sugarcoat and they will not hide their true feelings. They will tell you what they think. And I think that's good too, because that kind of, helps you become better at your craft, at what you're doing. So yes, you try harder, but then yes, that's what you ultimately need if you want to kind of change and evolve along the way and become a better whoever, you are. Okay. So tell me, you are a woman who's writing stories, and you also know that mine is a woman centric platform. So there have to be questions, related to women. So, do you think that the women rather, approach storytelling differently, perhaps more intuitively or empathetically? And if that is the case, how has that shaped your own work?
I found this such an interesting question, and I really spent a lot of time thinking about it.
Okay.
Um, and I think that I don't. I'm thinking of the kind of creators, whether it's in children's books or adult fiction and nonfiction, who I really, really enjoy and respond to. Um, and I'm not entirely sure if being, a woman who's writing makes one more intuitive or empathetic. Like I'm thinking of picture books that are created by, say, Rajiv Rai, who is, whose his books are imbued with empathy. His art is just, such a wonderful observation of people and settings around him. Or you have Charlie Makesy, who wrote The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, and such a lovely, tender, heartwarming book. Um, so I'm not sure if, being a woman who is writing kind of makes me more empathetic or intuitive. But I do know that in my own writing, I am guided entirely by my intuition. And when I set out to write, I'm really not thinking about, oh, is what I should write a book that is going to sell well or do well, or is going to be, marketable, or is kind of addressing maybe some kind of a trend or theme in publishing that everyone's talking about. Because I think the minute you start doing that, then it just loses, you're not really writing for your audience, you're not writing for yourself, you're writing for some other kind of forces and factors that you have not much control over. So I know that my own writing is guided entirely by intuition and a feel for this is where the book should go, this is what the characters should be doing. And I think children's books, especially, are such a wonderful, they're such wonderful nurturers of empathy in their readers.
Mm.
And so by necessity, by design, by their very existence, they are anyone who sets out to write a good children's book
Mm.
is writing with a great deal of empathy.
Yeah, you're right.
So
Because I think just the thought that you're writing for a child, I think will make your entire approach more softer, you know, because you know that you have to be able to, kind of be able to relate. The child should be able to relate to what you're saying. So that you have to stop adulting and you have to, start becoming a child yourself. So you do become softer. But somewhere I do feel, yes, there are male writers who are, you know, as you said, they're empathetic and all of that. But I just feel that women generally, are supposed to be nurturers and caregivers. So maybe a tad more empathetic and a tad more, softer. But yes, I guess, you can't say that it's only the women who are like that. So there was this very interesting thing that I read about you, that you've spoken about writing far-fetched stories as a child, right? So I want to know that what part of that imaginative girl remains with you today, and what have you unlearned as a woman navigating the world of writing? So something like, reality hitting upon, the imaginative and the, your thinking or whatever. Yeah.
well, I think that, 8 or 9 year old girl is still very much in residence within me. And, I definitely think that I continue to write some rather far-fetched stories at time, even today. I always like things to be a little, not always, little larger than life, little extra kind of wacky, little, zany and because I think as a child, those are the books that I really, really, those are the kinds of books that I loved. The books that really pushed the envelope, that were a complete escape into, a very, very different reality from the one that I existed in. So that child, that girl who's writing far-fetched stories, is still very much in residence. And I think very often, I'm asked, who do you write for? Yes, of course, I write for children. I write for other children from very, very different kind of walks in life and places. But I also write for the child that I once was and who is still very much, within me. The things I think I've learned over the years of, since I've started writing books for children is when that those far-fetched stories work, what kind of, when they work, when they don't, when you can push things a little bit more, when you need to rein things back a little bit. And I think that's where editors come in. And that's where your editor is someone who handholds you, who guides you through that process, who'll give you those difficult messages. I can give an example. I wrote a book a year ago called How to Win an Election, a Most Unreliable Guide. It's a middle grade book for middle grade readers, a work of fiction. And I remember I'd written this, the climax of the book that I had written was larger than life. It was really, really over the top. It was very, very kind of cinematic, dramatic, full of masala, and I thought it was great. And I, of course, sent it off to my editor, and we had this, a lot of back and forth on many things. And when we came to this climax, she said, I can see why you've chosen to go this way.
Okay.
But I think that if you set this, took the scene and set it somewhere a little smaller, a little quieter, and it wasn't, you don't need to shout this out. You
Okay.
can kind of contain this, rein it back in a little bit. And I think it'll be far more effective. It'll be a lot more enjoyable for your readers.
Okay.
And, and she said, try writing it that way. And if you don't agree, if you don't like how it's turned out, then let's come back to this. But this is what I think. And she was absolutely right. So I think you really, really need a great editor to be able to tell you, okay, pull it back in now. And then sometimes you need an editor who will also say, I think you can push this a little more. You can be a little more wacky here. You can have a little bit more fun here, and you should. So I think it's all a learning process. And like you said before, you have to, as a writer, as a creator, you have to be really, really open
Yes.
to, different feedback. And you also have to know what I love about the editors I've worked with is they're always suggestions. They're always like, you could try this. What do you think of this?
Yeah.
And they're really kind of guiding you towards something and then letting you kind of, take it to its rightful conclusion, I think.
See, I think, they have an objective view because you are wholly and solely invested in your work because you've written it, you've created it. So for you, every word, every sentence, every comma, every full stop is very, very precious. But of course, an element of objectivity has to come in. Somebody has to tell you, this is okay, fine, this is as much as you go and whatever. So, yes, we do need, and yes, you can be imaginative, but then have to be a little practical as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So, you have books like I Love Me, which
Mhm.
basically celebrate self acceptance and confidence. Now, was there a personal experience that made you want to write stories that empower young readers and especially girls?
Um, so I'll answer maybe the second part of the question first and then come
Right.
to I Love Me, which is a book I really love.
Mm.
I don't think I've ever set out to write a particular kind of character or a particular kind of book or
Mhm.
say that, I want readers to read this book and take away this message. I want a reader to feel this way when because your readers, once you've finished your book and it's no longer your book, the reader will have their own relationship with your characters. They will have their own thoughts and feelings about things. They'll make their own meaning, and sense making with the book. My very first novel called Loki Takes Guard, I had a which is very much, has become a book about empowering young girls to play sports, to want to play cricket, and that journey towards becoming there. And I had one young girl come and tell me, she said, I like the book, but I really hated Loki. She is not someone I would ever want to be friends with.
Okay.
So, and it's true, she's a very prickly, she's not a very kind of soft, easy to get, easygoing person. So I totally understood that. So I think I've never set out to write a book that will make someone feel this way or think this. Again, like I said, it's a very intuitive kind of process. And I think all our own, my experiences as a child, as a young woman, now as an adult, some of it comes into it, the things I overhear, things that I hear. I have two teenage sons, the conversations I'm eavesdropping in over there, and the things that I'm gleaning about young readers and young people today, all of that makes its way in. And, there are some people who will respond to a particular character's journey and be inspired by it and kind of want to kind of bring aspects of that into their own lives or want to kind of imbibe some of it. And some readers will just want to read the story, enjoy that kind of, the fun of reading fiction, and then move on to the next book. And that's absolutely fine. I think with I Love Me, I was actually asked if I would like to write a book about self-love and, self-acceptance. And who hasn't grown up feeling insecure about how they look, their hair, their weight? We've all gone through that. And as someone who grew up in the 80s and 90s, I'm so thankful that we had, very beautiful, talented actresses on screen, but they looked like real women. They didn't look like completely unattainable. Like we had Madhuri Dixit and Sri Devi, and in Tamil movies, which I grew up watching, there was Khushbu, and they looked like normal women. They had very, and but even then, I grew up with such a feeling of inadequacy about how I looked. And I think for today's young girls and boys, for today's young readers, the kind of images you're bombarded with on social media, the kind of actresses and models and social media influencers that they're kind of looking at and wanting to be like. You have 6-year-olds who now think they need a 7-step skincare routine, and you have brands marketing, serums and all sorts of things towards them. I can't imagine what it's like to grow up,
Yeah.
having this imagery thrown at you. And so it was a lot of that. And I thought, we're all just children are, and all of us, we're just to be able to accept who you are. And it's a long, long journey and it's a long process. And not everyone is able to be kind of self actualized in that way from a young age. But I think if books like this can, a young reader can read it or have someone read it to them and then kind of see all the things that maybe people might, poke fun at them about or make fun of certain aspects of their appearance and kind of be able to shrug it off like Rubina does in the book. I think that would make me very happy. I think the nicest thing is that I've had so many mothers who have bought the book for their children come and tell me how say that I wish I'd had this book when I was a child. I wish, I'd had a book like this to tell me I'm fine the way I am. And it would have, meant a lot to me then. So I think, that to me is such a special thing.
Of course, as it should be, because that is like, it's coming from a place where it's honest. It is something that a person feels that, oh my God, even I should have got it. And yes, in today's day and age, what with this, the social media and the influencers and all of that, we do need a lot of it. I mean, self-love, acceptance, loving yourself the way you are. I think this needs to be impressed upon the children from a very, very young age. So tell me another, woman-centric question that, so when you're creating your characters, how intentional are you about creating strong, relatable female characters who challenge traditional gender roles?
So I think, I think about this a lot because there is, I think in the last 10 years, in Indian children's publishing and across the world as well, we've had a lot of books which, we, the kind of rebel stories for good night stories for rebel girls and from kind of celebrating inspiring women in different fields to kind of books where really young girls and women are the champions of these stories and are very empowered. And I think it's been amazing, and I think it's really really something that we did need to have. And I think those books are also appealing to children of all genders, right? It's not like these books are only for young girls to read and enjoy and take something away from them. But having said that, so for example, I wrote a series of books about space and about space exploration and research in India through the lens of the work that ISRO does. And they're not a series of books. They're 3 standalone books. One is called Topi Rockets from Tumba. They're all published by Penguin. in India. And the first book looks at India's first kind of rocket launch from Tumba back in the 60s, before ISRO was even formed. Another book looks at the Mangalyaan missions. And the third book, which just came out very recently, is about the Chandrayaan missions.
Okay.
And somehow, in all three of these books, the main protagonist is a young girl. And I, I didn't set out to think that, oh, I should write a book in which a young girl is being curious or asking questions or wants to kind of be a scientist and wants to do something, make something. But and by the time I came to the third book, I actually thought I've written two books now with a female. Maybe I should write a, because people would keep asking me, young boys would come and ask me, like, why do you only write books about young girls? You never have. And I'm like, no, no, but look, I've written these books in which the, main protagonist is a boy. These books do exist, and here they are. And so I thought maybe I should try and write with a, but I just couldn't. This set of books needed to have the stories told through the voice and the life of a young girl. And that's just how, and also I think because there was something very deep down inside me in which science, we do have now more and more women in STEM fields, but there are still so many struggles for women within those fields, once they get there. And even the journey towards becoming a scientist or working in research or being in STEM is one that comes with many, many challenges. So I do think there was something inside me which was like, no, you do need to show more women in STEM. We do need to have kind of, what is called, narrative nonfiction or fiction with kind of this very, very strong messaging to young girls in it. And so, yeah, in this case, it was kind of something that I set out to do with the first book, and somehow that thread continued to the third book. But I will always say that I sometimes think that, the book will tell you what kind of characters it needs. The story will kind of inform that. Or you start with a character and then the story comes from there. But in the case of these three space books, it was, I think, in spite of any efforts of my own to kind of change things around by the third book, I think I really, really did want to write a book in which and for boys as well to also read these books and not think that oh, this is only for something that boys can do or girls can do and that kind of thing. I think these books are important for all readers.
Absolutely. You've made such, how should I say, important and critical, points over here that first of all, girls need to get the message that, they can do anything that they want. I mean, like, the world is your oyster, nothing's stopping you there. And at the same time, the boys need to understand that there aren't certain roles or certain jobs or whatever it is, occupations which only they can take up and not. So we need to do this at all levels. And I think it's a fantastic thing that you're doing, because when we are trying to, go about getting gender diversity, inculcating it, introducing it in organizations. So we have to start at the very basic level where these gender roles, which have existed for so long, we dismantle all these beliefs around them, the norms around them, that there are certain things which only boys can do and certain things which girls can do. So I think fantastic job that you've done out there, and we need more people like you. All right. So, of course, you're a writer and you're a columnist and you're a mother. So, I'm sure you've answered this question many times. So, between being a mother, a columnist, and an author, how do you protect your creative space and avoid being defined by just one role?
I ask myself this question every morning when I'm like, how am I going to set this time aside, which is the sacred time for me to write, and nothing else can get in the way. And I think it is so important. It is important to try and set a time in the day in which you're like, this is just for my writing or for some creative work that I'm doing right now, and nothing is going to come in the way from it, and get in the way of it. But I think that, on some days I am a good mother and not a very good author or not a very good, communications professional, because parenting will take priority that day because there'll be something happening. I think on some days I'm a great writer and I'm not such a involved, in tune parent with my children, and I think that happens. You have to. I think there's this famous quote, right? Women can have it all, but not at the same time. I think, yeah, some to an extent, and I'm looking at it at a very kind of granular day-to-day basis. There are days that work takes priority, and of course, my children are 14 and 17 now. They are very independent. They, are able to look after themselves really, really well. But I think even, from when I started writing when they were much younger, there are days when I'm consumed by work, by editing, and I'm not fully present for them. There are days where I have to be there for them, and then the writing takes a bit of a hit. What I have tried to do now when I am writing a manuscript, for example, I'm doing that first draft of a manuscript, I will find that 1 hour of the day, which is usually early in the morning,
Mhm.
and then I will try and say, okay, that's before all the other kind of asks and demands of work, the home, and all of those other things come in the way. And I will try and kind of set that time aside and work on it. And again, even there, you have to be forgiving and kind to yourself. And know that some days you will meet your word count, you will be able to write, you will feel really, really great. And other days it'll be some one sentence after, and that's it. And that's all you're able to produce that day, and it's
Yeah.
okay. And I think one thing is to be kind to yourself, be forgiving, not put too much pressure on yourself, which I've learned over a period of time. It's and I think it's true for whatever you're doing, right? If you are a parent, if you are running a home, if you work outside the home at the same time, um, and you have maybe a passion project on the side, it can be a real, it can be a real struggle to kind of manage all of them. And I think the only way that I've been able to do it is to say that I'm not going to be doing everything every day perfectly, beautifully. And that's how I've kind of made my peace with it.
I think we all have to do it. First of all, I think as women, we need to understand that, like you said, we cannot do everything perfectly every day. There is no need to do it also. So, whatever is important on that particular day, whatever needs to take priority, we should be able to figure that out and just go with the flow. So, there is no, that I'm the best. You don't have to be the best. And you don't even have to try. Just do what is required to the best of your ability. And I think that's it. It's not that
You
difficult.
know,
And this,
yeah, and I
yeah.
sorry.
No, no, this whole thing about being a superwoman and doing everything, I think we need to just kind of, just let this go because it cannot happen, should not happen. And like you said, love yourself, be kind to yourself, and do whatever is required of you on that particular day, right?
And I think our children don't even expect us to be perfect. Our children want us to show up in whatever way, shape, and form we can. And I think that's all they kind of really want. They don't want, so they're not expecting us to be super moms and do this and do that and stuff like that. And one thing I would like to say is that, as someone, of course, who has when your children are young and when they're babies and toddlers and they're going through those early years, I know that it can feel, I remember at that point thinking, oh, this is going to be the rest of my life. I'm never going to get, a moment to myself. I'm never going to be able to work or do these things because they are so kind of all consuming of our time and thoughts and emotions and everything. But they grow up and they become these wonderfully independent, resilient, people. And you will find that there will be a time in your life, in your career, in whatever it is that you want to pursue, where you will suddenly have that time, that headspace, and that ability to do those things. So don't kind of lose hope. And if in those years when they're very young, if you can find some way to kind of keep in touch with what it is that you want to do,
Mhm.
it could be 15 minutes, could be, listening to a podcast, whatever it is, but find some way to kind of keep that interest in you going. I think you'll find very soon the years pass quickly and they'll be, they'll be taller than you.
Yes, and before you know it, they are ready to fly the nest, and then you're kind of left on your own and, twiddling your thumbs, so to say. So, yes, while you are busy raising them and, you don't seem to be having any time for anything else, I think it's important to, like you said, stay in touch with the things that you like, whatever it is, even if it's a very, very, like for a short duration during a day or a week or whatever it is, just keep that alive and there will come,
The
and
time will come.
so there will come a time when you will get the time to do it, because then you will need, something. And if you've kept in touch, it'll only help you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Of course, as we've been, talking about it, we find women doing so many different things, in the world around us. And I don't think there is any field, where you don't see women, right?
Mhm.
But despite that, we're also aware, we also know that there are, a lot of challenges which women continue to face for various reasons. So my question to you is that, have you ever faced stereotypes or some kind of a pushback in publishing or the creative spaces? And if yes, how did you navigate such challenges?
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think children's publishing is actually the gender imbalance is skewed towards women. There are more women in publishing as editors, as writers, than there are men. We have some fantastic men doing great work as well, illustrating and writing. But it really is a space where you will see more women than men, I think. So really, in publishing, I have never faced any kind of pushback. But I will say that as someone who started out in advertising, and I consult now with some agencies every now and then, and join in on certain campaigns and pitches. I think advertising I can see as a space that's come a really, really long way. I think when I started out a couple of decades ago, it's advertising is a very open kind of space. People are very, very friendly. It's a wonderful kind of creative field to work in. But I do remember being a younger copywriter, a junior copywriter, and either having ideas kind of shut down very summarily and kind of dismissed, or not being given a chance to speak, or if I'd worked on something with someone else, possibly if my art director, art partner was a man, he would be asked to kind of present all the ideas and things like that. But what I see today is that that is definitely not the case. The kind of creative spaces I'm a part of today, I'll give you an example. We worked on a campaign that was around, wellness for a very, very large tech company last year. And a lot of it, of course, was around, women's wellness, menstrual health, menopausal wellness, being able to have balance in the workplace and all of those things. And of course, the idea that a tech company might want to do a campaign like this for their women employees 20 years ago was probably unthinkable. They wouldn't even have thought about it. So, hats off to them for wanting to address something like this in the workplace. But I think a couple of decades ago, the men in the team would have also tried to mansplain periods and menopause to the women and say, actually, this is what it's like. And what was really great this time around was that all the men on the team wanted to hear from us, the women on the team, what it was like, what our experiences are like. They were very, very open to kind of feedback that we gave them, saying that, actually, a woman wouldn't say something like this. They might react like this instead. So it was a far more open, collaborative experience, and I think that is something that's really, really changed today, and I'm so thankful for it. And similarly, kind of because of my experience in the nonprofit sector, when we are doing work around CSR and things like that. I am able to step in and say, maybe this wording is not something, we should phrase this differently. The kind of visuals that we might want to change, showed this way instead. And again, there's a lot of kind of, yes, this is someone who comes with this experience. She knows what she's talking about, and we should probably be listening to it. So I think that's been really great.
Yes, actually, the world, because, I think there is a lot of awareness is being created around it. There is more openness, and somewhere men also understand that these are certain changes that they have to bring about. There is actually no choice, So over a period of time, yes, like I said, education, awareness, all that has played a role. But then men now know that, this is the way to be. So I guess when human beings, initially you may be resistant to change, but when you understand that change is the way it is going to be, then you accept it as well, which is what is happening, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the more diversity, the better the work is, the better the quality of the work is. So I think everyone is cognizant of that now.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me, as you mentioned, you worked closely with nonprofits and the social sector, some startups and all that. So, how can stories drive change in areas like gender equality or education, when you are like associated with all this as well?
Yeah. I think there's scientific research that shows that the human brain is more likely to remember information or retain information if it's presented in the form of a story rather than just with, data or, isolated facts. And it's so true, right? I tease my 17-year-old son. He still remembers all the words of a particular book I used to read to him when he was a babe, like when he was 3 or 4. He remembers the words for it word for word, and with great clarity. But if I ask him, what did you study last week for your psychology test? Like blank, So I think it just goes, and it's for me, it's always an example I like to go back to. So I think really stories can, in the space of, the development sector, stories can be real emotional engines almost that can drive change, empathy, and also kind of prompt action.
Right.
I think when you come to how can stories make some kind of a change in spaces like gender equality and education, again, like I said, I've worked with Pratham Books. I have also published many, many picture books with them. And as a multilingual, non-profit children's publishing house, their books really do reach children across the country. And if you kind of hear some of the stories, that we hear from the field, from teachers taking these books to children in rural parts of the country, peri-urban spaces, in government schools, in affordable private schools. It's amazing. There was a book called How Do Aeroplanes Fly? And the illustrations, it's all about the science of how airplanes fly, but the illustrations show a young girl flying the airplane. And I think in a rural school in Rajasthan somewhere, after the book was read out in class, one of the children said, I didn't know that women could fly airplanes. Like I didn't even think that was something that was possible. So it is amazing how stories can really plant the seeds of these kind of ideas and thoughts and possibilities in the minds of young readers. And I think and the change will be organic, it'll be a little maybe slower and things like that. But I think it's stories and books can be such a wonderful way to kind of put these ideas and thoughts in the minds of children.
Right. See, yes, the change will be organic, but it'll also be long lasting because all these ideas, all these thoughts will become deeply embedded. You won't think about it. It'll come very, very naturally to you. So it'll stay. And which is what we want. We don't want something superficial, something temporary, which is only here today and not tomorrow. So definitely stories, yes, they do make a lot of difference. So, as I see, your writing often uses humor and self deprecation. And so, my question is that do you see humor as a way for women to express power, truth, or rebellion, or is it something only, I mean, you do it as, a person?
Oh, I think humor is such a great way to talk about difficult things,
Yes.
and for you yourself to deal with difficult things that are happening to you in your life, maybe.
Yeah.
So the parenting column, which I wrote, I think until COVID, until I had my children at home with me all the time during the lockdown, and I'm like, now I don't think I can write about being a parent anymore. This is too close to home, so no, I'm going to stop. But I wrote a weekly column for the New Indian Express called The Mothership.
Okay.
And honestly, there was no real parenting advice in that column at all. It was just me trying to deal with raising two children in this day and age. And the only way I could kind of deal with the things that I was experiencing or thinking about was to be funny about it and to make jokes about it. And that is really all I could do. And I think it's also just as a person, I'm like that. I think if I want, people to like me, I'll try and crack jokes. I don't know how effective it is, but I'm always cracking jokes or making some kind of, silly statement in the hope that people will like me. And I do that with books with children because I think, again, like I said earlier, if they're not interested in the book, if you're not engaging them, they're going to put that book aside and maybe they'll pick up another book to read. Of course, their phones and devices and screens are always there luring them, to pick them up. So for me, I think, well, if I can make my reader laugh early on in the book, and then maybe if it's a good laugh, it's a good joke, that child will be like, maybe there are more jokes in this book this way, and I'm going to keep reading. So I think, and I think it's a great way if I wanted to write a book about, about why voting in democracy is important. I think, and I didn't put any humor in it. I don't know how many 12 and 13-year-olds might want to read it and find it entertaining. So I think for me, it's just a way to bring ideas I have to life, to deal with difficult things that people are going through. And somewhere along the line, some idea, even from the jokes and the silliness and the humor, I think something will, a little deeper, will stay with the reader.
Yes, again, you're very, very right. Of course, there are issues which are serious, which require thought and all that, but you don't always have to whine and cry about things. You can kind of put the same point across, bringing out the humor what I mean is that putting it across in a lighter fashion, which then again is likely to stay and likely to make people want to know more about what you're trying to say. So, and of course, looking at you, I know, I mean, you come across as a very bubbly and a very, effervescent kind of a person. So I don't think you really have to try hard to bring humor into anything or to, bring the funny side out. It's like your nature. So,
Right.
so I guess that's kind of, shows in your writing as well. So tell me, when we set out to do something, or even as we are doing it, we do come across people we look up to. People like we want to be like, or people who we think we could, take a leaf out of their books or something like that. So when it comes to you, which women rather, or writers, or artists, or everyday figures have shaped your voice and values as a storyteller?
No. I've said, in another space that I think every opportunity that's come my way or that has been presented to me has happened because of an amazing woman that I've had the great fortune to know. I was offered my very first job in advertising by the amazing Sugana Swami at Ogilvy, Chennai. I was a computer science graduate. I had no idea what I was doing. I just picked up the phone and you could actually do that in those days. You could call the main number at Ogilvy, Chennai, and the receptionist would put you through to the creative director. And I got my first break in advertising there. I've had some amazing editors at the newspapers I've written for who have asked me to write, to contribute, to have made space for the things that I've wanted to say, and who have rightfully said that imposter syndrome that so many of us have, um, who have brushed that aside when there have been times when I've been asked by editors at newspapers, would we want you to write about this. My first reaction is always like, I'm the wrong person to do this because I'm not an academic on this subject. I'm not an expert on this subject, and you should ask someone else to do it. And I'll tell you who also you should ask, but don't ask me. And I'm really, really lucky that those editors, this is Rosella Stephen at the Hindu Sunday magazine, Sushila Ravindranath at the Express. They've always said, no, but we want your take on this. That's why I'm asking you. We want to know what you think of this. And trust me, it will be fine. And we will be with you, through this process. The editors I've worked with across publishing houses at Pratham Books, Bijal, who gave me my first break, Sudeshna at Speaking Tiger, Shrayani Basu, Simran Kaur at Penguin. They have all championed my work. They have all understood, not tried to also, make me be this kind of writer, be that kind. They've recognized what my voice is, and they have nurtured it. They have helped shape it, and they have given such excellent feedback. And they've just really, really believed in me, even in those moments when I have not believed in myself and I've thought, I can't do this. This is not something I should be doing. I don't want to do this anymore. I'd like to give up at this point of time. And they've all really, really encouraged me. So I think even today I work with, communications company called Vaka Media. We're an all-woman team. It's wonderful. All these kind of opportunities and connections that I have made, I will fully say that they have come because of women in my life who have seen very often things in me that I have not seen that I didn't know I had, and who have not only kind of pointed it out and said, this is something I think you'll be good at, but then really invested time in me to sit with me and then, nurture that, shape that, give a platform for that. And it's I understand how privileged I am to be able to say that that's happened to me, through my working life and career.
That's wonderful. I mean, we definitely need more women like that. And I think it's just that, more and more women are realizing that we need to be there for each other, because I always believe that, women are very, very similar because of the kind of lives we lead, the struggles, the challenges, all of that, which men can find very difficult to understand because they are different,
Mhm.
completely different.
Yeah.
So if we are similar in various ways, and we understand what struggles we are going through, then we should be the ones who support each other rather than looking for support from someone who has no idea where we're coming
Yeah.
from or what we're dealing with. So hats off to these women, and I hope we too can do something like this.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right. So Menaka, tell me, when you look back years from now, what do you hope your stories, both for brands and for children, will have left behind for the next generation of readers, and, if I may say so, especially girls?
Wow. I don't know if brand work will last that long, but I think the most special thing about being a writer of books for children is that when children are really small, they say, right, readers are made on the laps of their parents because you're reading, and it's a very precious time. It's a very precious part of that parent-child relationship, or an educator or a librarian and a child, this kind of bond that's formed through books. And I think to be able to even figure in some way, in that moment
Yeah.
of a child's time with a parent, and to act as some kind of a window into the wider world for a child. Because that is what books do.
Yeah.
Books kind of are both mirrors which reflect your own reality back to you, which is so important. And they also open doors and windows into other lives, other ways of existing, other ways of thinking, which is so crucial, especially as children get older and older. So I think if in some way the books that I have written um, feature in that making of a young person, from their parents' lap to the library to the bookstore, and shape them to become readers even as they become older and as an adult. I think that is such a wonderful honor. It really, really means a lot. And as someone who's read voraciously throughout my life, to think that, I might kind of be that for a young reader is something which is really, really special. And I think that in itself is such a wonderful legacy. I think for girls, I love hearing from girls who have read my books, and who kind of come and tell me their experiences, and the conversations they've had after reading their books. And I think, again, right, even there, someone messaged me after one of my books, and they said, my 10-year-old daughter read your book and then came and asked me, what is toxic masculinity? And she said, I had to really think before I answered that question. But I think even for young girls um, to kind of be able to write characters, which tell them in some way, shape, or form that who you are, what the things that you desire, what you want from your life, even if everyone around you is saying that that's not for you, that's not meant for you, you shouldn't be wanting those things. Uh, if they can read, about Rabia in Mangalyan or Valar in the Chandrayaan books,
Mhm.
um, and think that, no, I can do this. This is something, that is not impossible. I think what a great thing. My job is done, and I will be very, very happy.
Absolutely. That will be actually a beautiful legacy, because somewhere by doing this, you are breaking those biases, those prejudices, those norms, and you're telling both the genders that these are things which anyone can do. Gender has no role to play in it. Anyone who is capable can do it. And I think that is a beautiful legacy which you will leave behind. So, once again, hats off to you. All right. So, Menka, while we've come to the end of the conversation, we do have the rapid fire round, which is 5 quick questions followed by 5 quick answers. So, are you ready for it?
Okay. All right. Let's try. Okay.
All right. So, the first one is, I think, relatively easy. A female author you deeply admire.
Oh gosh, Margaret Atwood.
Okay.
Adore her. Absolutely.
So do I. All right. Um, the next one. The story you still dream of writing.
Oh gosh. The story I still dream of writing. I think I would really, really like to write some kind of historical fiction which tells the story of women like my grandmother,
Lovely.
my mother-in-law also, and that period of time and their kind of experiences and struggles. Yeah. That's
Wonderful.
something I want to write about.
I love to read that. Okay. The next one. One word that defines womanhood for you.
Oh my God. Tenacity.
Yes. So agree with you. So agree with you. All right. The next one. If your life were a children's book title, what would it be called?
Oh, if my life was a children's book title, it would be called You Never Know What's Coming Up Next.
Ah, that's a good one. All right. Finally, the last one. Your comfort read when you're feeling low.
Oh, Judy Blume's Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
All right.
I read it. I read it as a 12-year-old and I read it every 2, 3 years. I like to go back to that book. I just love it.
You know, there are certain books which you just want to keep going back to. And, it started happening more now with me than before. Maybe you
Yeah.
just feel that, okay, let me, I've forgotten what the book was all about. I need to refresh my memory. All right. So, Menaka, what a wonderful conversation. Fascinating. I could resonate with so much of it, understand where you were coming from. And, that kind of, I think, comfort and understanding makes all the difference between a conversation which stays and a conversation which just kind of flies out of the window. And I think this has been, at least I think this has been one of those conversations. So thank you so much for being on the show. It was really wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Like I said, I really loved the questions you asked. They were so thoughtful and they really made me think. And I really, really love to do that. So thank you so much for having me on your show.
You're more than welcome. Thank you for tuning in to the About Her show. If you enjoyed this episode, there's plenty more from where that came from. Our previous guests have shared some amazing stories, so be sure to catch up on past episodes. To keep up with our inspiring conversations and to never miss an update, hit subscribe, rate, review, and share the love. Follow us on social media for some great content, and don't forget to check out our website www.aboutherbysangeeta.com for stories that resonate, inspire, and empower. Know a remarkable woman or an inspiring man blazing a trail? We'd love to hear from you. Drop us a note at web.abouther@gmail.com and let's bring their story to life on the About Her show.